The 2022 FIFA World Cup is coming up, and as is often the case for football fans, their excitement for the Cup is tempered by the controversies at the venue. Qatar is under fire once again, this time for a marketing strategy gone wrong. In this video, we're going to talk about the latest controversy facing Qatar, and we'll go through all the other controversies surrounding the newest edition of the World Cup. First, it looks like Qatar Living is becoming a Qatar headache for the people in charge. Qatar Living is the country's official platform of sorts on TikTok, allowing people from around the world to show their excitement for the Cup. There have been videos featuring hundreds of fans decked out in face paint and themed jerseys and equipped with signs and banners. Now, football is a pretty popular sport, so seeing this kind of fervor around, it isn't surprising by any means. But as it turns out, those fans aren't really fans at all. Many of the videos are totally staged with crowds of fake fans. Some of the fake fans have been seen pumping up England, Brazil, Portugal, Argentina, Ghana, Cameroon, and Tunisia. The scheme was busted by eagle-eyed viewers who noticed that these supposedly organic celebrations looked very fake and staged. It's also kind of weird that so many fans have arrived in Qatar already, with a week still to go before the World Cup kicks off. On closer inspection, people also noticed that some individuals appear to be supporting multiple countries, and amusingly, there were no women in any of the videos. We're curious as to why Qatar would feel the need to do this. The FIFA World Cup, out of all tournaments, should need fake fans to pump up the hype, we think. Our best guess is that this is some misguided attempt to deflect from all the negativity surrounding the tournament right now. Now, the Qatari government's role in this scam isn't confirmed, but it wouldn't be out of character for them. They've had a surprisingly long history of using volunteers or even migrant workers to fill out stadium seating when ticket sales were low. One notorious example comes from the 2014 Qatar Open for international beach volleyball. Migrant workers staffed the bleachers, and when they were interviewed about it by the media, they confessed that they were there for the money and not for the sport. It turned out that migrant workers had been used in a variety of sporting events to give an illusion of high attendance numbers. Even players have been noticing it, though they'd rather have a fake audience than no audience at all. But the residents of Qatar disagree. According to a survey conducted this January, Qatari residents might feel discouraged from going to live sports because of the fake fans. The Ministry of Development, Planning, and Statistics reported that 2/3 of Qataris blame the spread of paid fans like these for their lack of interest in football games. We can see why they'd feel that way, honestly. A big part of being in a fandom is feeling a sense of community and shared enthusiasm. You wouldn't want to be in any kind of fandom where people were paid to be there. It'd feel completely fake. All things considered, though, this is far from the worst abuse of migrant workers done in Qatar, but we'll come back to that later. Next, we'll try to run down all the controversies around this World Cup, starting from the bid itself. The bidding process for the 2022 World Cup began all the way back in 2009. Qatar competed with bids from Australia, Japan, South Korea, and the United States, eventually getting the nod. Almost immediately after Qatar won the Cup, there were allegations of corruption in the bidding process, but it'd be a few years before FIFA really got the wake-up call they needed. Throughout the early to mid-2010s, investigative bodies and journalists from all around the world were poking holes in the conspiracies that drive the C-suite at FIFA. Many executives of the organization resigned amid this, and some of them were indicted on charges of corruption and bribery. Sepp Blatter was punted out of the office of FIFA president in 2015 after 17 years on the job. During that scandal, it became incredibly clear that Qatar had paid bribes to the officials at FIFA to back their bid for the Cup. They probably felt they had to do this because hosting the Cup in the usual way in Qatar was impractical for a number of reasons, chief among them being the fact that Qatar's temperature in the summer FIFA period ranges from the mid-40s to the low 50s. The fact that FIFA went so far as to reschedule the World Cup just for Qatar's sake was super fishy, and the fishiness was proven in the For starters, let's look at their labor rights record. We talked a bit about how Qatar was using migrant workers to pose as fans to promote the Cup, but that's probably the best treatment those workers are going to get in the country. Qatar, like its Gulf fellows, has a long history of using migrant workers to get their blue-collar jobs done. These workers are lured into the country through the promise of salaries that'll be really high when the Qatari reals are exchanged into their local currencies. But once they arrive in the country, that's when mistreatment and abuse begins. This has been profiled in many news reports, with the biggest bombshell coming from The Guardian in 2013. It was revealed that the workers had poor access to food and water. Their travel and identity documents were held by their employers, and they weren't paid reliably, with wages being outright withheld in some cases. If that sounds like modern slavery, that's kind of what it is. Between all those conditions and poor safety regulations on construction sites, mass deaths of workers have been reported. It was estimated that between Qatar securing the bid and the actual kickoff of the World Cup, up to 4,000 workers could die. While Qatar had promised to bring about labor reforms to address all these problems, those reforms never happened. France 24 ran a report on migrant workers in Qatar just last month, and things were basically still the same. Moving on, it isn't just migrant workers who are at risk of mistreatment in the country. You see, FIFA is an inclusive organization that supports things like LGBTQ rights. However, Qatar is a conservative Muslim nation, so it's hard to say that LGBTQ rights could be guaranteed in the country. Not that this is the fault of the country's religion, of course, but the regime in Qatar has been very unfriendly to that group of people. In 2013, Qatar's World Cup director Hassan El Thawadi said that the country would welcome anyone and everyone to the World Cup, but he made sure to say that public displays of affection wouldn't be appreciated in the country. That applies to everyone, but we imagine that it would apply extra hard to LGBT fans, who are generally pretty well represented in the fandom. The country will also not tolerate any public display of affection towards the LGBT community, with the country planning to confiscate pride flags and rainbow-colored stuff. They say it's for the safety of those people, since even if the government doesn't do anything to them, every day Qataris just might. What does that say about the safety of LGBT folks in Qatar? One effect of this is that Josh Cavallo, an openly gay Australian player, expressed fears about the way he'd be treated in Qatar. The tournament's organizing committee assured him that he'd be welcome, but as we just saw, Qatar doesn't even guarantee anyone's safety from Qatari residents. Finally, let's take a look at the Boycott Qatar 2022 movement. The sports bastion in Europe has been ablaze with calls to boycott the country and its tournament, trying to draw the eyes of the world to all these human rights and corruption concerns. And it isn't just fans criticizing Qatar either, with the country taking heat from Nancy Faeser, a minister in Germany. But you all know what Isaac Newton says: for every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction. Football fans have been firing back with protests of their own, and Qatar has been vehemently defending itself and reassuring the world that there's no threat to anyone's life or safety. Of course, they haven't addressed the issue of migrant workers' safety, nor have they said anything about the environmental impacts of the air-conditioned stadiums. FIFA themselves are caught in the middle. On one hand, Qatar is their World Cup partner, and they're the ones who gave the honor to them, so they have to stand by them. On the other hand, FIFA doesn't want to be seen supporting Qatar in all its controversies. It's gotten to the point that the disgraced Sepp Blatter, who presided over the awarding of the bid, now thinks that it was a mistake. A bit late, Sepp. Regardless of how things turn out, it looks like Qatar and FIFA will win out. In spite of all the controversies, the 2022 World Cup has been selling tickets like gangbusters. That's gonna be it for our video today. What's your opinion on this whole situation? Is the world actually obliged to boycott Qatar, or can you watch the games without too much guilt? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.